You're alone on a road that cuts through the thick Michigan forest. The air changes, the hairs rise on your arms, and something steps out of the tree line. 7 feet tall, canine snout, yellow eyes locked onto yours. It could be a cryptid, maybe a demon, but one thing is certain, it's watching. If you too like to step out of the trees, check out Pantheon, our brand inspired by myths, legends and folklore. We ship worldwide and are rated excellent on Trustpilot. Link in the description. In 1887, deep in the wilderness of Wexford County, Michigan, 2 lumberjacks stumbled back into town with a story no one wanted to believe. They claimed they'd seen a creature standing upright like a man, but with the head of a dog, tall, muscular, covered in dark fur, and watching them from the tree line. It just stood there, staring. There's just the account. A single report scratched into the margins of Michigan's forgotten history. And yet it refuses to die. As the years passed, the story spread, quietly at first, through hunters, truckers, through those who worked the land and walked the woods. They saw something too, always tall, always canine, always walking on 2 legs, and always with eyes that seemed to understand. It didn't behave like an animal, nor did it feel like one. It was something else. Then, in 1987, something strange happened. A Michigan DJ named Steve Cook, working at WTCM-FM in Traverse City, decided to write a playful song for April Fool's Day. He called it The Legend. It was meant to be a joke, a mix of local myths, spooky cliches, and invented folklore. In his words, he just made it up to completely entertain the audience. The song described a creature that haunted Michigan's woods. Part dog, part man. It stood on 2 legs. It came back every decade. It left fear behind. Cook played the track on air once, and then the phone started ringing. The caller didn't think it was clever, or funny, or cute. They were nervous, serious. Some sounded like they hadn't spoken of this in years or ever. One by one, they told him that the song had described exactly what they saw. They didn't know each other. They weren't calling to chase fame. And yet the details aligned. The height, the legs, the intelligence, the eyes. The creature in the woods that shouldn't exist, but somehow did, or at least had been seen. They were describing a memory. Some kept their story secret for decades. Others had tried to forget it completely. But something about hearing it named, hearing it framed as a song, opened a door, and what came through that door was fear. Steve Cook had simply spoken its shape aloud, and that was enough. The story, once scattered and hidden, suddenly had a centre, and once the first witness spoke, the others followed. Letters poured in, more calls, eyewitnesses, second-hand accounts, unshakable stories told in low voices. It was something that had lived quietly inside people until someone gave it permission to speak. It's easy to dismiss it as a hoax, a case of mass suggestion. But it was just a joke. So why did so many react with panic? Why did the same description emerge over and over again from people in different towns with no connection to each other? Whatever Steve Cook unleashed, it wasn't fiction anymore. The legend had become a mirror, and across Michigan, people began to see something staring back. Across decades of sightings, the description almost never changes. 6-7 feet tall, broad shoulders, narrow waist, covered in matted dark fur. The limbs are wrong, long and jointed like an animal's, but it stands upright without effort. The legs bend backward like a dog's, the feet are broad and clawed, and yet it moves with balance and grace and terrifying control. The head is pure predator, a long, narrow snout, triangular ears that twitch at the slightest sound. And the eyes. Always the eyes. glowing yellow or deep amber, set forward like a hunter's. No one ever forgets them. The way they lock on, the way they seem to narrow in thought. The dogman's posture is fluid, natural. Like walking that way isn't difficult, but normal. Built in. And of course, it stares. That's what leaves the deepest mark on people who've seen it, just the silence, just the eyes, just the feeling that whatever it is, it's aware and it's choosing not to move. Witnesses talk about the moment when they realise they've been spotted. They say their bodies lock up, their breath catches, the urge to flee dies before it can take shape because something in them understands if they run, it will follow. The creature's stillness, it's charged like a held breath stretched to breaking point. And finally, when it moves, when it wants to move, it explodes. People say it runs like a man but faster with longer strides. It clears ground in seconds and then it's gone. Those who saw it are left behind, trying to explain something that doesn't fit, something too human to be animal, too animal to be human, and too intelligent to be either. It's easy to confuse Dogman with a werewolf. Both share the same form, upright, furred, powerful, and with a canine head and unnatural height. But the deeper you look, the more those similarities fall away. The werewolf belongs to us. It's tied to human myths, human sins. It transforms under certain conditions and begins as a man. It ends up as a monster, and behind the teeth and claws, there's still the echo of a person, cursed, infected, or lost to rage. Dogman doesn't carry any of that weight. It doesn't need a trigger, it doesn't arrive with a reason. There's no transformation, no morality, no narrative to explain it. It steps out of the forest already whole. Where the werewolf howls, Dogman remains silent. Where the werewolf fights against its nature, Dogman has none to resist. It rejects the human condition entirely. The threat is existential. People report the sense that whatever they saw had already decided what it wanted from the encounter before they had time to move. They felt like their thoughts weren't their own in that moment, like something had reached across the space between them and filled it. Dogman is something that was never part of us to begin with, and yet somehow it knows exactly how to find us. Dogman isn't new. Ancient Greek and Roman writers described tribes of dog-headed men, the cynocephali. Pliny the Elder described them as savage warriors who barked instead of speaking. Later accounts gave them tools, language, and trade routes. In medieval maps, they stood alongside the Amazons and Cyclopes, neighbours, dangerous ones. Even the church couldn't ignore them. Some versions of St. Christopher's story gave him the head of a dog as a sign of strangeness. A holy figure with a monstrous face, part of a tribe but set apart. Christian but inhuman. In that version, the divine was something that stared back at you through the mask of an animal. Something that you couldn't reason with. Stories like these migrate. Among Native American traditions in the Great Lakes region, there are tales of spirit dogs, shapeshifters, and upright beasts who travel between worlds. They're boundary figures, messengers, guardians, or warnings. Some walk with a man, some walk ahead of him, some wait in the dark. The Dogman fits this pattern, something that doesn't attack, doesn't speak, but always stands at the edge of what you understand. Belief doesn't matter. Most people who've seen it weren't believers before. They weren't chasing legends, they weren't looking for monsters. They were just driving, walking, living. But the story keeps spreading. Someone tells it at a bonfire, someone else hears it on a cold drive home. No one really wants to claim it, and that's why it lasts. Most monsters die in the light. Dogman spreads in silence. Dogman only needs one thing. The moment someone sees something, they can't explain something and can't stop remembering. Psychologically, it becomes a loop. The brain tries to rationalize, but the image doesn't fade. It lingers. The stillness, the stare, the sense that you were being watched by something with intention. It doesn't matter if you tell yourself it was a trick of the light. The fear stays, and the fear is contagious. You don't need to see the Dogman to feel it. You just need to know someone who did, someone who isn't prone to fantasy, someone who tells it plainly like they wish they'd never seen it. That's when belief starts, a hole in certainty. That's how modern mythology grows, from dread, from moments that won't leave, from stories told in low voices by people who clearly aren't lying and clearly aren't all right. One theory says it's a misidentified animal, a bear standing upright, or a large dog glimpsed through the trees, or a brain filling in details under stress. But that doesn't explain the posture. It doesn't explain why so many people describe the same thing, even when they've never heard of Dogman before. Another theory frames it as psychological, the shape of a predator pulled from a deep instinct, a projection, the mind giving form to a fear when logic fails. When the forest goes quiet and something feels off, the brain draws a shape that fits, and then can't let it go. Other traditions tell of shapeshifters, spirit walkers, and beings that stand between human and animal. In these stories, the forest has eyes, and some of those eyes belong to things that don't need to explain themselves. Other explanations drift into conspiracy, experimental weapons, dimensional bleed-through, a camouflage form used by something that isn't supposed to be here and wears the skin of a predator because it works. Every theory fits a piece of the puzzle, but none of them hold it together. Each one gets close, then slips, like trying to define a shadow by measuring its edges. It always moves just before you get there. The road falls quiet and the air goes still, and something stands at the tree line. People call it Dogman. They argue about what it is, but the name doesn't matter. It's not there to be understood. It's there to remind you that you're not alone, that the woods have rules older than yours, and that something in them still follows them. It waits at the border of your understanding, and it will always be watching.